Hey, Winnie. Hey, Thomas. How are you?
How long were you doing that for?
I know.
If we turned up 5 minutes early.
I've been doing that for about 20 minutes. Yeah, yeah.
You're nothing if not prepared.
Hey, everyone. Sean here from Unicorn Ventures, and thank you so much for joining us today. I need you to buckle up. Today, we're not just hearing from two authors, we're hearing from two absolute rock stars who've done what most founders never managed to pull off. They have gone through the late nights, the bruises, the how the hell do we fix these moments, and put together a playbook for the rest of us to learn from. It's not just about theory that is up in the clouds and you don't know if it's actually going to work. This is proven blueprints and maps of what you can do to actually get your startup from idea to even enterprise level. It's the simple truth. It's the founder's journey. It's the messy bits, the magic bits, and the lessons that punch in the ribs, but in a good way. They've spoken to companies who have nailed it, and they've spoken to companies that have fallen in the face, and sometimes companies that have managed to do both in the same week, funny enough. All right. So we're going behind the curtain. We're going to be talking about this book, Riding the Unicorn. Yeah, there we go. And why now? What shocked them? What they learned from that, and their own personal journey. It's going to be honest fun in those, oh, damn, that's so true moments. So let's dive in. Please welcome Wenee and Thomas Daricott, the authors of Riding the Unicorn. Guys, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Sean. It's great to be here.
Yes.
Now, I came across this book. It was about 2.5 weeks ago from the time of this recording. I was on my way to Melbourne. I was at the Melbourne airport, and I always like seeing what books are coming out and so forth, and what the thought leaders are going. And I saw this book, and I think you'll agree, it just bounced off the shelf. It was beautiful design as well. And I went, oh, that's the book I need to pick up. And I looked at it, I bought it straight away, got on the plane, one chapter in, and I reached out to both of you going, I need you on this podcast. It was
Well,
amazing. It's so good. And it's so, so funny. Which one of you's got the wicked personality? Is it both of you or one of you?
I think it's probably like a yin yang of wicked personalities. We
Yes.
complement each other in the wickedness department.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Wit is a mainstay of our conversation, so it's we found it really interesting to see who can tell who wrote which chapter.
Yes.
It's slightly different, but
Yeah, I've been keeping up with your socials and looking at your book launch, and it's only new, people. So if you haven't heard about the book, please check it out. I lent my copy out, and so I bought a Kindle version as well. I'm waiting for the Audible version to come out
yes.
because I love Audibles. But can I just ask you, why this book? Why now? What inspired you?
Well, I suppose for a bit of background, Waney and I, we've been couples in business and we are also couples in love. And we've collaborated on different projects before. So about 10 years ago, we launched Sydney's first dedicated cat cafe together. Prior to that, Wenny had launched some different enterprises in law school. For example, she launched this amazing platform called Survive Law, which was at the time Australia's highest traffic law student website. But we'd also had some fumbles as well. Like I launched a bar which crashed and burned. And we both settled into this point where we'd sold our interest in our successful ventures and we had wiped our hands of our unsuccessful ventures, and we both ended up working in the startup and innovation space. When he was working in legal tech and still working as a legal academic, and I was working as an early employee for Australian startups. And what it meant was that two things happened. Firstly, just because of our work, we developed a really lengthy list of people we knew who were more intelligent than us and more successful. So CEOs, founders, people who had taken the journey all the way to the end. And the other thing was that we would always have people approach us and ask how they could get their ideas off the ground. And it often wasn't because we were CEOs ourselves, but it might be that people would say, hey, Thomas, you work in the startup sector and you launched a cat cafe. How can you do this? And Wenny would often field these questions from law students, right? And we thought, wouldn't it be good if we could just distill the insights of people who have done this and put it into a step-by-step guide? And then we looked at each other and we realized, hey, we know a lot of people who could contribute to this. If we can find the common denominator, there might actually be something here.
100%. And another part of it was actually that both of us at different times have worked for UNSW Founders, which is, I think, this region's #1 business accelerator, right?
Yes, #1 startup accelerator. That's including all of the non-affiliated startup accelerators like StartMate and Fishburners and what have you.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting space. So in addition to all these businesses, I started a startup straight out of law school, as Thomas mentioned, and it scaled, grew. We had 77,000 Facebook fans, 500,000 site visitors, and then I exited. So I did the whole journey in a microcosm. It wasn't $1 million exit. It was I've got a good mortgage deposit exit. This is cool.
Which is huge when you're 23.
Oh yeah, awesome. It was
That's
awesome.
huge for anyone, right? I was reading that part of the book, and I was going, this in itself, this chapter and how you did it, and getting all the authors on board and the community to rally around it. I thought that was a workshop in itself. Or I thought it was amazing, because there's a lot of people out there that are trying to build their following, and they're getting 6 likes here. They have 113 followers. I myself have 37. You get 77,000 would be amazing. So yeah, sorry, continue, but don't undersell that, because actually, out of all the book, that one resonated as the most, first milestone of let's go for that.
It's so interesting that you should say that, Sean, because it's a common thread that we found throughout quite a few of the startups, that building that initial community, one, it's hard, but another way, once you work it out, it's not hard. And I think part of it is around, there's a few threads to it, right? And I think one of the really good examples that we pull through in the book is actually Perla and how they built their community. Perla is finance, fintech. Who gets excited about fintech? I don't get excited about fintech, but I am an avid user of Perla because of how they built their community. They basically, you tell the story best because you actually worked for Perla.
Yeah, so Perla faced a really interesting challenge, which was that the technical infrastructure of what they offered didn't really differ to that of any other shares investing platform, right? What they were proposing, you could find, in your Sharesies or in your eToro or in your Stake. So they realized that their point of distinction was not going to be some revolutionary new advancement in technology. It was in fact going to be the community that they built around it. So what they did was they looked at the current state of affairs in Australia and they realized, wow, we have this entire generation whose only hope of being financially independent is to be fortunate enough to inherit. What happens if you have a millennial who has 3 siblings and suddenly they own a quarter of a house? What happens if you're a millennial whose parents don't own a property? You just didn't win the lottery of life.
We can't just wait for our parents
Exactly.
to die. This is a crazy approach.
That's
to
not
right?
It's not a healthy solution for many reasons.
And the longer they live, the kind of cost of living and the value inflation is kind of like, hey guys,
Exactly. Who wants to be in a situation where they're waiting for a relative to die just so they feel like they own the roof over their heads? It's terrible for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
So what they started by doing was connecting with the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, or FIRE. And
this movement lives on Reddit.
Yes.
There was basically a Reddit thread called our fire. And this thread is wild, Sean. I've tumbled down it and I would say, wow, I'm very I thought I was not sane in how I saved or thought about money. But wow, there would be people who go, you know what, I ate cans of tuna and I never leave the house, and that's how I hit fire at 29. This is not inspiring. It's inspiring for many people there, and that's great for them, I should say. But it was this really super engaged group.
Yes.
Who wanted to...
Now, for some people that aren't aware, so there are platforms other than Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
Yes.
Yes.
So do you want to explain Reddit to our audience and what it is?
Oh, Reddit is so interesting. Reddit these days has basically been marketed as what old internet used to be.
Yeah.
So Reddit is basically a community forum. If anyone remembers what that's like, if you think about it
community groups that used to be.
Groups. Yeah.
Yes.
Facebook groups used to be like this. And you can, what you'll see is like r slash whatever the group is about. So it could be fire, it could be legal tech, it could be anything. It could be anything.
Beekeeping,
Yeah.
agriculture, LARPing, you name it.
Yeah.
Like LARPing, live action role playing.
And
Thank you.
post underneath it, right, about this topic. And so it's a really clever way of getting people, when you want to talk about something that you want to talk about, you'll find the other group of people who want to talk only about that thing.
Yes. And the thing with the FIRE movement on Reddit is that they are the complete antithesis of that dude bro we all know who believes in day trading, who thinks that, he's the next Warren Buffett, which, side note, not the right forum, but all these guys who idolize Warren Buffett, he has always advocated for like a slow, steady investing strategy. But you meet these guys who'll say, I'm going to be the next Warren Buffett. I'm going to pick the winning stock and I'm going to buy low, sell high. That's how I'll make my fortune.
Literally not his approach.
No, it's not.
No, not at all. Not even remotely. But this FIRE community is the antithesis of that, where they would believe in investing in exchange traded funds, which are pretty much like these bundles of shares where you buy into an exchange traded fund and you're essentially buying hundreds of companies. So, for example, you might have an ETF, as they're called, that tracks the 200 biggest companies on the Australian Securities Exchange. Or you might have an ETF that tracks the top 100 eco-friendly companies, so you can align it with your values. Absolutely. And the idea with ETFs is that if one company suffers, then all of the others thrive. So this FIRE community, like Wenee said, they were eating canned goods, they were scrimping every cent on their electricity bill, and they were just trying to invest the same amount in ETFs every single month, no matter what. And what Perla discovered was that the business model around most shares platforms was all about that high volume of trading, like buy and sell every day so that you can get the best price. And it meant that it didn't really appeal to investors who just wanted to buy once a month and that was it. Like none of the features were built for them. So
seriously, who's got time to day trade? But
it's a full-time job.
That's right, exactly.
Right. It's a full-time, and that's why the kind of people who day trade, they get really intense. But that's actually the brilliance of like getting a community like this, because what Perla ended up recognizing was that if you can unlock this kind of approach, you're actually unlocking a much wider community of investors. All the people who would just like to make money over time. They would like to have their money maybe grow a little faster than interest rates, maybe. They just wanted an alternative, right? And like, I think the common threads here, because you mentioned about my first startup, about community building, right? In both cases, in Perla's case, and in my case with Survive Law, we built exclusively for a very engaged community, just for them, not for anyone else. Of course, ideally, we met so many founders who go, we asked them, okay, so what's your market for this? And they go, everybody, everyone will buy this. And you hope so. But on day one or day zero, we're just building for that little. I was building for law students who wanted a bit of a community, who want to know, how the hell do you get through law school? This is horrible. We've got to read 300 pages in the first week, like easily every week for the rest of your life. You're told on day one, like literally, this is what happened to me in day one. I walked into my lecture. It was 2 hours long, hour and a half. The doors got locked, and the lecturer said, "Okay, you're going to do an exam on the lecture now," and we did the exam. The end of that half hour, so 2 hours in, she said, "All right, everyone stand up. Look to your left, look to your right. At the end of this year, only one of you will be standing." It's crazy. Wow. And so my community was a counterpoint to that. It was a much more supportive thing. And that's why it grew, I think, because I was building for that community, just like how Perla built for the FIRE community.
Yes.
And it could, one, they brilliantly unlocked a new market, but two, they had a really engaged market, a group of people who felt seen.
Yeah. And in the case of Perla, what it meant was that Perla appealed to this FIRE community at first by hitting those Reddit threads, subreddits, by creating content that would appeal to them, and then by listening to them and building features that community wanted, things like auto invest.
Yeah.
And then I suppose what we found was with startups or any kind of innovative business that starts with a specific community, they kind of have two options. One is to just build for that particular community, which is what Wenee did with Survive Law. And then it meant that in the end, the College of Law purchased your startup because the College of Law is always trying to target law students that are about to transition into their careers.
Yeah.
Or the alternative is to use that small community as a test case. And this is what Perla did, where they started with a highly engaged community. Then once they had that community locked in, they went broader and they started saying, hey, millennials or even boomers who didn't get in on the property market or Gen X or Gen Z, if you're freaking out about the future, there are alternatives to this myth that we've been sold that we need to accrue wealth by buying property. You can actually secure your future financially. It's very boring, but we like that. We like boring because we don't want to gamble with our futures. And so they expanded from that, just in the same way that Canva started its life as a design platform for high school yearbooks.
Yeah.
And then
Super
once they
niche.
had proven their concept, they were able to go to the wider market and say, I'm skipping a few steps here, but say, hey, look what we were able to do. We tested it with a group who face the same problem every year, which is they're non-technical users who need to design something. Now, if we could do it for them, we can do it with a wider audience.
I mean, Airtasker, who we feature in the book, they really, when you think about it, they did the same. They focused, while Airtasker can now be for anything, where Tim Fung initially started was he literally would stand outside IKEA and hand out flyers saying, do you want someone to help assemble this? Assemble this furniture? Because nobody really wants, I mean, some people, I like it, but not how many people have the time or like it, right? And then
Or the skill. It takes a lot of skill. It takes skill.
or the skill. Yeah, so he built for a specific community at a particular pain point.
Yeah. What are some of the other companies? And we won't go into all of them because I know I have you only for a little bit of time. But what are some of the other companies that you showcase in your books? You share your own experiences, but what are some of the other ones that stand out for you?
I think a real standout for me was probably Like Family. Like Family is a fantastic case study because A, they're doing great things. B, they're solving a really important problem. And C, they were really honest with us about the trial and error process they underwent to find their success. So Like Family, we probably related to them because it was a company that was co-founded by a couple, Jenna and Matt. And Jenna spoke to us and said, when they first started considering Like Family, it's because Matt's parents had moved to Australia from Montreal. They had Matt quite late in life, so they were quite elderly. And they were at a point where they were contending with health issues and a bit of dementia. But Jenna and Matt, they were at that point in their career where they were expected to prove themselves. You know that point where you feel like you always need to work late, that you feel this corporate all-seeing eye of Sauron that's trying to separate the wheat from the chaff and determine who's going to get ahead. So it meant they were working these really long days at the same time as Matt's parents, who were from Montreal, were at home in a suburb that they hadn't really lived in. And so Jenna and Matt were receiving phone calls all the time from neighbors saying, hey, I think we found your parents wandering down the street.
So they're in this like really difficult situation. We've all experienced, like we're the sandwich generation. We have to help our parents, but Matt's got parents from Canada. And then literally, like we're not making this up. Enter a woman called Destiny.
Could not have been more perfect.
Easy, right? And it was sort of a friend who turned up and said, her name was Destiny, and she said, hey, I'll take your parents out for a coffee. I'll take them to the beach. I'd love to do that. I'm free right now. Let me help you out. And that started to happen. It became, it was easier for his parents. She became a way into the Australian community to have them be seen. And it gave them the spark of an idea, because this is what's so interesting about the power of business, in my view, in our view, really. What Like Family does is literally it gives you, a chance to help people who need care, but not in a nursing sense, in a friendship sense, in a connection sense. They're about connection. They do things that are sort of adjacent as well, like, do you want me to help you with your groceries, unpack things, do a little bit of cooking, but they aren't nursing, right? And it's the kind of thing that you might want a government to provide. It could be a public service, but the brilliance of Like Family, because this is the brilliance of business, right? if you can find a way to just even lightly commercialize that model, because people will pay for a little bit of it at least, then you can prove that one, you can fix a problem worth solving, which is so important. This is the reason I love Like Family as well. But my other example, Sean, the AI guy, is an AI company, so I will get to that, I promise.
No, that's fine.
No.
I love that there's still good people in the world when you look at like families, like there's people that would actually want to do that. And I think that's what I take away from that story. You mentioned so many other companies in there. Atlassian was one that got, I think, a good prominent feature, only because it's got a hell of a lot of stories and learnings from that. When you started writing the book, were you secretly hoping to figure out one particular thing or make sense of, having gone through your own journey, but was there anything that you're wanting to kind of make sure came through for the audience?
You know, honestly, when we started writing this book, I was really aware of something, and I told Thomas this. I said, writing a book takes time. So whoever we pick for this, we are effectively taking a bet that by the time we finish this book, they will at least be as successful or more successful than when we started. They will not F up.
Yeah.
Don't make it
Gamble
look
today.
bad. We believed in you.
Because you have these nightmares that between the date that you submit the book and final publication date, that the news will just be filled with stories of these failing startups or CEOs embroiled in scandal, and fortunately the opposite happened.
And so really what came out of it,
I'm saying that's an opportunity, second revised edition. You know,
Yeah, good point.
or even a dark version of it, all the failures. But I think,
Sorry, Wenee. Yeah.
no, it's all right. Like what really came through, like especially reflecting on it now, is that you're looking at the traits, like, and this is what I wanted. I wanted to figure out what are the traits of the people who keep improving. I'm not saying constantly, you know, success after success after success. No one can succeed all the time. That's a total fallacy. But what makes these people so much better at pushing through things? And there were a few things that came through. Like one of my favorites, honestly, is that I would say everyone in this group, they reflect something called, like, that we've termed being an endless novice. So
I love that one. Yeah.
endless novice. Like they are just so humble that they're willing to just learn the hell out of whatever they need to learn. Like Nellie McQuinn is a great example. She's in the book. She basically, her origin story is that she left Sydney at 19. She was deferred uni for a year to pursue her acting dream. So this should end up as a tragic story where her acting dreams are stashed, blah, 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 blah. But that's not what happens at all. So she turns up in London. She's an all right actor. She gets some parts, but she's an innately bossy person. So she basically talks to her producer and goes, "This production is terrible." And the producer says, "Oh, want to produce it with me? Please, I need help. I agree, it's terrible." And so suddenly at 19 years old, she's helping to produce this theatre production. And she learns that. She learns what's required. And this leads her, this is like in the 2000s, to try, okay, well, how about we get some content out there? This is very new. Content's not really a thing, but it's cheap. And so she teaches herself like early days YouTube video production, which is nightmarish back in that day. And just teaches herself TV production.
And then you fast forward, she ends up running this media empire that acquired Coco Melon, which will send shivers down the spine of anyone with toddlers.
We're sorry.
But
Sorry, Sean.
But it is something that we found with every single founder that we interviewed, regardless of their background, which is that they needed to be an endless novice. Because when you're the founder and CEO of an unproven business model or an innovative business model, you are going to face unknown problems every day. Often problems you didn't even know existed yesterday, which means that unless you've landed some miracle, you're probably not going to be equipped with the skills to solve the problem.
No one is.
Which means that your job really is to become what we coin a problem solver in chief. Like, it's easy to settle into this mentality of thinking, oh, I've just got to solve a couple of weeks worth of problems and then I'll return to what I want to be doing in this job. But solving problems is your job.
Yeah.
And because they're always going to keep evolving, as the business grows, you'll always face new and alien problems. Your only hope is to be an endless novice and be comfortable solving problems that you didn't even know about previously. And every single founder we interviewed showcase that trait. And so we really wanted to convey that to the reader because we think it can sometimes be a misconception and a missed opportunity. People might think, oh, I have this particular skill set that I really want to showcase in business. And that can be misleading. But at the same time, they might think, oh, but I'm not a tech genius. I'm not a coder. How am I possibly going to do this? Just think, well, great news. Every single founder is terrible in some aspect of their job. They need to be by default. So no matter how skilled you are in a particular area, it's only a matter of time before you need to start from the beginning at something. So you might as well start now, provided that you are willing to accept the journey.
Oh, it's interesting you should say that, because that sort of ties into something that we were talking about that I really liked, right? Because obviously I come from law, and a lot of lawyers who become founders, they are horrifying perfectionists who never really get started. Because it's hard for a lot of people. You have imposter syndrome, you're overcoming perfectionism, you're worrying about whether you're good enough, and so it's not just a lawyer thing. But you sort of, we talked about this idea of the Solopoulos score, you know, and this is based on a founder called Alexis Solopoulos.
Yes, he was the co-founder of Mad Paws, which
Your former boss.
Yes, and just last week, in fact, it was acquired by Rover, which is like this.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which is great because I had some employee shares, so that was a pleasant day for me.
A little bit of money.
Yeah, but Alexis has this philosophy where he highlights that he's constantly going to face new problems, and his responsibility as a CEO is to triage how perfect he needs to get his solution. For example, let's say your business is facing a regulatory issue. The government requires you to fulfill certain criteria to keep operating. Well, that is probably going to be a 100 on the Solopoulos score. Because if you get 90% and they say, sorry, you're 10% non-compliant, then the ATO or ASIC or whoever shuts you down.
Yeah, your license is gone.
That's right.
You're done. You're done for the day. But like a website, you know, maybe the copy on your website isn't really like, it's a bit, you're not feeling it, you know? You're not sure whether that's the reason that you're not getting a lot of sales. It might be, it might not be, but it's bugging you in the middle of the night. You're like, this is terrible. But on the Solopoulos score, it's probably like a 50%, maybe even a 30%, because one, you don't know if that's the issue, and two, you're not going to go out of business because of the copy.
It's not business critical.
Yeah,
I mean, it might be causing some friction or challenges or pain points or bottlenecks, but it's not essential.
Exactly.
So it helps you sort of prioritize and sort of even, in a sense, identify and understand where you're going to put your energy, because that's the thing in Australia, because you asked us why we wrote this. And in Australia, we do not have huge amounts of funding, right? But yet, we are the most capital efficient place in the world to find a unicorn.
I love that you actually started off the book. I think it was like in the first quarter of the book, talking about, one, you're going to make mistakes, you know, get used to it. But you really highlighted how much Australia and New Zealand is leading per capita. A lot of the innovations. I was for a second there, I was going, is New Zealand beating Australia? I think it is. Oh no, but it doesn't matter. We just combine the two as we do. When they're doing well.
Sorry, New Zealand.
But just talk a little bit about because we also invented the tall poppy syndrome.
Yes,
as well,
very much so.
We have the imposter syndrome, we have the tall poppy syndrome, we have all the syndromes. So how do we get over that? And perhaps by sharing this with our audience, the successes that we've had, that can help.
I think there's probably two parts to this. The first part is the challenges and opportunities of operating in such a capital efficient environment. And then the other is the cultural component of not coming from the US, not identifying with like that marine inspired oorah philosophy of so many US founders. Look, for the first point, I guess to remain on a really testosterone fueled example, I always think of Australia and New Zealand a bit like the mythologized version of the Spartans, where the Spartans would send their children out into the wilderness, and many would die, but those who returned would be amongst the most formidable warriors in the entirety of Greece because they knew they could survive. And it's the same, I think, with ANZ startups when they start pitching for funding. Now, unlike the US, most VCs will not even look at a startup in this part of the world if they can't prove their revenue, if they're not revenue positive already. Whereas in the States, depending on the market, you might be able to land $100 million for an idea.
It's so interesting you should say that. That's a very specific thing we just said, right? And it's because one of our founders actually says that. So he's the AI guy. He's the legal AI guy, Sean, so not the general AI guy. His name is Nick Whitehouse. He's our New Zealand founder. And he talked about his experience of going to Silicon Valley. And in New Zealand, where there's even less money than there is in Australia, he basically spun out legal AI way before it was cool, back in 2017. He worked out of a major law firm, and I get the sense that the partners must have tapped him on the shoulder and said, "You're our resident nerd, you're chief digital officer, do something with AI, I guess, that could be good." And he ran with that and eventually spun out a startup out of that. And he started with $2.1 million, which sounds like a lot of money to you and me, and would be. I would love that much, but it's nothing in the deep tech required for AI. So he had to make a product that worked. There's no choice. He had to make a product with customers. So he did. And when he landed in Silicon Valley, he was walking around the cafes and he was shocked to find out that a VC fund had just dropped $100 million for an idea about AI, just to see whether it would work.
And in the book, you pointed out that not only does ideas kind of get more funding over there because it's an opportunity of dreams and over there, but over here they're also astounded at how much Australian New Zealanders can achieve with so little as well.
Yes. And that's the point, because I can't imagine a founder who would be upset by the idea of receiving millions of dollars for an idea. It's great.
Oh, terrible. Keep it away from me. I hate money.
Exactly. But the reality is that money always comes with conditions. It's like if you get a brand new credit card and they say, "Hey, congratulations, you've got a $50,000 limit on this credit card." If it's your first credit card, you might think, "Oh, this is great. I've essentially been gifted $50,000. But of course, there's going to be a huge interest rate attached to that, and it's probably going to compound with the passage of time."
And in the US, in the US, and this has come out from people we've spoken to, when you get large checks, you have massive, maybe insane growth expectations.
Exactly. Whereas in ANZ, by the time you reach the stage of VC pitching, you need to have proven your business model, which means that you're already a lot more likely to be self-sufficient. And it gives you much more bargaining power when you come to the table. And it also means that you're a lot more likely to survive the next stage of the process. Because we hear so many stories emerge from the States about a company that raised $50 million and then completely crashed. And if you're looking at that from this part of the world, you'll think, where did that money go? Because by the time we fundraise, we already have a clear home for that money. We're clearly just scaling something that already works. So whilst it can feel, a bit demotivating, it's actually a really positive thing.
I think you think about it as discipline. Right? That's the way I often think about it. That
discipline, financial responsibility, or
yeah, absolutely, and just generally, right? When you're thinking about this sort of early stage of your idea and getting it to market and getting it to customers, that's where you're doing the really hard part of business. The way I've always explained it is, in Australia, everything's trying to kill you. Every single thing. The spiders and the snakes and the crocodiles and the sharks and the pollen, everything's trying to kill you. It's a harsh environment, and the startup environment the business environment is hard, because we don't just give away money. Very few banks just give away loans. Westpac's a bit better these days, but not hugely. And so even one of our well-known unicorns, Go1, who we spoke to very recently at Bond University, he was initially funded by maxing out credit cards. He was a doctor, so he could get the credit cards, so he just maxed them out. Would he do it again? Is it an advisable approach to business? No, and he said so. But it was with that kind of pressure, because it was personal debt on his name, he needs to make it work. And that's what I mean by discipline.
It's so funny you should say that because I was one of my last guests were talking about how much of a motivator borrowing from friends and family can be, whereas from a bank, it's just on me. But when you're borrowing from people you love, it's kind of like, oh, I got to make this work.
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
In America, you talked about like where'd the money go, and in the book you said they tend to take out long-term leases, build up sales teams, and or just infrastructure and teams, and like building it and they will come kind of mentality, as opposed to our approaches. And as you said, you should only take investment to accelerate what was already working. In fact, reading your book, it was almost like, don't take money. Like if you can do it yourself, do it. But so do you want to explain a little bit about that as well?
Look, I think that's probably our personal view as authors.
And honestly, like just to be really clear, both of our countries have adapted to the environments in which we are in. There is nothing wrong in American companies for doing what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Because like honestly, because when you take those big bets, they have a market that they can scale to. So if it works, they can suddenly scale to their entire massive US market. And most Australian companies, their blueprint now is basically proven in Australia, go overseas, whether it's Asia, more recently, the US, UK, Europe, wherever. To take it to a bigger market is our big dream, right?
Yes.
But to your point about whether you should take money, look, this is a now more prevailing view in the Sydney startup community. So we're really reflecting that back. But I think it's about financial discipline.
Definitely. And I think there's two things to consider. Firstly, if you're working in something like deep tech, for example, then there may be no way around it.
You
for
must
example,
have the money.
Yes.
You're effectively researching.
One of the startups we showcased is an Australian startup called Symbiote.
Yeah.
And they're focused on molecular biology. So they need a certain amount of money and resources.
You can't get a customer for something that doesn't exist, and so some of their money comes from grant funding. So,
Absolutely.
And that's a good thing. Like, it's a really interesting sort of balance when you think about it, because there is some kind of innovation that needs to come through grant funding, government research, being in a university, and Symbiote, the reason we included them is that they're a very clear example of that whole world.
At the same time, with advancements in generative AI, it is now easier than ever to build a digital product with minimal funding. So we would both argue, I think, that funding is not as essential as it was, say, 5 years ago. And because of the funding environment in Australia and New Zealand, often by the time startups reach a point where they would start pitching for VC funding, they may not actually need it.
Yeah, I think the good way to think about funding, honestly, is funding is an accelerant. It's fuel for something that's already moving. And that's a good way to think about business.
Yeah.
And I think because we get this question all the time, and when I was a young founder, this is an answer I would have loved. I've just loved people say yes, which is, hey, what grants can I get to make my business work? And I've thought about this a lot. We've thought about this a lot. The answer is, when you think about it, it's deep tech and research and science that should get grants. It needs grants. Everything else is a business. You don't need a grant. You should try and find a way to just at least prove there's a market. And it's really interesting because, we talked about community building earlier today. And really, what is the point of community building? The point of it is to show that there is a distribution model. Because as Thomas just said, with AI, you can suddenly build a product like that. It is unusually flat how easy the point of entry into a market is. It's never been like that before. So therefore, the point of difference for any product is not actually the idea or the product itself mostly. It's about your ability to get into the hands of people, to build that distribution model first, to build the community first that wants to use the product.
I think something else that people don't often discuss is there's almost this romanticized idea around pitching for VC funding as if it's a rite of passage within a startup journey. And this is something that we try to challenge. We obviously don't know the proposed business model of our readers or their ideas. Maybe funding is essential, but we just want them to question whether or not they need it. And something else on that note is we want them to question whether or not a startup business model is in fact the right business model for them. Because often people might think, I want to launch a business. I don't see many businesses like my proposed one around. Therefore, it must be a startup. But
Yeah, I love this because you talked about this in the book, and it links in the question I was going to have about the misconceptions about business owners and startups might have that were shattered through your research. So, can you talk about the different business models and how they might apply?
yes, absolutely. So a startup, in essence, is a business model that is built to scale. And at a glance, people might think, well, then that's me because I want my business to grow as big as possible. Like, who would say no to that, right?
But you had a great analogy for this, right? If you think about gardening, startups are like weeds, but good weeds, because jacarandas, by the way, they're weeds. They're invasive species. I didn't know that until recently. And traditional businesses, they're like trees. They grow steadily over time and in a
Slowly.
model that you'd expect. But weeds grow fast.
And with that comes certain expectations. For example, if you've launched a startup and you've built it as a startup and you have investors on board and you go to those investors and say, hey, great news, we just turned 10% profit this last year, so you're going to receive a dividend. They will say to you, what the hell are you doing? Why are you giving me money right now? You should be pouring this money into growth, and you should be selling more equity in your business to make more money to fuel that growth.
Yeah.
Whereas if you run a small business, then the day that you turn profit, provided you've met your debts and everything like that, that money is yours. And it's so easy to think about startups as Atlassian and to think about small businesses as the mum and pop laundromat on the corner.
But this is why we included a guy called Haider Shikara in the book. He is, other than being just casually an Olympian, a Taekwondo athlete, he's actually a lawyer, which is a hard pivot and an annoying level of overachievement from this book.
Law and martial arts. What an amazing combination that
I know, right?
Just fighting on all fronts, just a combative guy.
But Hader launched his own law firm, and since then, the law firm has grown, and he has implemented this business model of buying small suburban law firms all along the East Coast. So he now has a pretty large legal empire. And some people might say, well, is that a startup? No, because firstly, it's a very conventional business model, right? He is not innovating using tech, and that's an important distinction.
Like he does improve the operations
definitely.
of the business.
economies of scale and
It's a tech-forward business. He uses cutting-edge software and everything, and that's also what gives him an edge when he buys some of these older law firms. But secondly, a startup is theoretically a business model where you could have 1 billion users and cut your staff down to a skeleton crew and still be able to sustain the business. Whereas a regular small business that has grown, like a law firm, it's only as good as the people involved. If tomorrow 90% of Hader's lawyers quit,
it would be a big problem.
that's right. Like, that's 90% of the business that shrinks because he's only as good as his infrastructure and his lawyers allow him to be.
But here's the big point that we included Hader. He might actually be wealthier than some of these big ticket startup exits that you're seeing. Because for various reasons, right? There's one exit. Whereas in his case, he has steadily grown his grove of trees. Each business has a certain amount of money coming in, a certain amount of money going out, and he can sort of implement things that he's learned from each business and scale it across the different law firms. Go, this is good marketing, which he became very good at, even though he was never a marketer. He was an endless novice, and he studied the hell out of how to market a law firm really well. I see very few law firms doing marketing as well as him. And so because of that, he has steady growth across all of these law firms, which means that, quite frankly, I think he might actually be richer than some startup founders.
Because here's the crucial thing. Any money that his law firms make at the end of the day falls into his pocket. Provided he's met his overheads, he gets to take it home. Whereas you'll hear of founders all the time who are worth $250 million.
In shares.
Yes.
on paper.
What would happen? That's right. Like, if the company hasn't floated on a stock exchange yet. They can't access that wealth at all.
It would be such a bad signal if they were to sell their shares.
Well, that's even if the startup has listed on a stock exchange.
Yeah, sell it too.
That's right, because if you find out that the founder has suddenly sold $250 million worth of shares, that's a sign that the business is going to crash. So there are all kinds of regulations in place that require founders to adhere to certain milestones before they can sell their own assets. So it's kind of like they're in a golden cage, and so many of them will then turn to private loans and equity from banks to live a lavish lifestyle that's commensurate with their net worth. And then that means that they're suddenly just beholden to two masters, the VCs and the banks who are lending them private money.
Okay.
Against the shares, the value. That's a Zuckerberg, Bezos kind of way of living. Okay, so what's the inverse? Okay, so if you're being an endless novice and learning and looking at marketing strategies and going, yeah, I'm going to do that and scale that. What is it the top mistakes businesses keep repeating, even the smart ones that you saw through your research?
It's a good and bad problem. They are naive and they think it will be easier than it ever is. Every founder and business owner I've ever met is a dangerous optimist.
And you need to be. Right?
You need to, because you have to be crazy in a sense. You are in Australia, if you're reasonably lucky, working for someone else will be steady and you'll get a certain amount of money and it's good. Whereas every business owner who's trying a business, they think, if I can do this, I get a moonshot at not needing to do that. As you like to say, like a founder or business owner is someone who work 80 hours a week for free to avoid working 40 hours a week.
I love that. So being an endless optimist
That's maybe
could be a mistake.
I think another is not listening to their target market or not listening to what their target market is really saying.
Yeah.
So in our chapter on how to make mistakes, we featured a couple of case studies of startups that had initially failed in their recent iteration because they were so committed to the product they had created. There was this one founder who we showcased. He had said, not to us, but to Sydney Morning Herald, I believe, the day that I realized my startup wasn't going to work was so confronting. It was like someone has been telling you that your baby is ugly for months and months, and you just don't want to see it.
You don't want to see it.
That's right, yeah.
It's a beautiful baby. It was a great one.
Yeah, like you're so committed to the thing that you have created. So I think not listening to your target market, but sometimes you need to listen to what they're not saying as well. So there was an example of a startup that we interviewed called Forage.
Yeah.
And their founder, Pasha Rayan. Forage is really successful now. They've had a huge exit. But when they first launched, they wanted to solve a problem for students, which is helping to connect students to opportunities when they graduated. So these two founders, they were university students at the time. So they built up this database of 600 engaged students, and they sent around surveys to all of them. The target market were really, really engaged, and they all said, we want mentorships.
Yeah, we need you to help us with mentoring so we can get jobs.
That's right.
That's the line. Think about it.
They didn't even say that at first. They just said, we want mentors. Yeah. And so Forage thought, okay, great, we can make that happen. So they went out to industry, they found all of these mentors, and then the platform just failed. And they couldn't determine why. They thought, we're giving the students what they said they wanted, but often they'll show up for one virtual mentoring session and then not return. And so what they then did was they booked in time to speak to all 600 of these students. And they learned that students didn't actually want mentors. They wanted job opportunities. And they just thought that mentorships were the best way to do it. Yeah, because they thought, if I have a mentor who's high ranking in this company, it will be a networking opportunity for me. That might lead to internships, which leads to a job. And then the mentors would kind of show up maybe prepared to provide guidance, but not job opportunities. And when the students gleaned that, they thought, oh, well, this is a waste of my time. I already go to university for this.
Yeah. And there's like another mistake in there that I think a lot of founders make, really. it's about how you get your interactions with potential customers. The idea of surveys versus the deep conversation.
Yes.
Because if you ask a survey, no matter how open-ended you ask that survey, you're not able to read what someone might actually be really saying to you. And you're getting that qualitative research approach of, okay, so why? Like, unpack it. What do you really want? That really made the difference with Forage. And,
It did.
you know, long story short, fairy tale ending, Forage was acquired by EAB, which is a huge US ed tech. They exited. And
After pivoting to a virtual internship model.
yeah, so they have huge brands with them, obviously big law firms, banks, you know, I think Coca-Cola is one of their virtual internship providers, etc., etc. And now Posh is onward to Y Combinator again, because they went to Y Combinator the first time, and we're like, wow, we are embarrassing. We don't even have a clear business model over and over and over again.
The third thing I think I would add, which is a pitfall, is what we coined the Capone trap, named for Al Scarface Capone, one of the most notorious gangsters of the 20th century, who, as you may know, was not undone because he was tried for murder or racketeering, but
Tax evasion.
Tax evasion, exactly right. So for us, the Capone trap is the boring problem that none of us think about that can still be just as fatal as a sexier problem.
Compliance.
Yes, exactly right. So it's businesses and startups that ignore compliance, either because they weren't aware of the regulatory landscape in which they were operating, or they just thought they'd kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
That problem will hit you straight away.
Yeah, that's one that can really put people in big trouble. With the second one of asking the questions, I think that's really important because I've had a few guests that saying really understand the audience and talking with them, but hearing what they're actually saying is so important because we have a bias. We're psychologically wired to hear what we want to hear, and if we have an idea and we're so emotionally invested, so maybe it's best to get another person to be asking the questions so that you're not looking through that lens as well. If you do have no choice but to do it digitally, then get really clever questions. When you do psychometric exams, they ask you like 100 questions and they'll ask the same question but three different ways along the thing.
Yes.
Just so you know how you actually feel. So we should be thinking about qualitative and questions as well. Is there a part? When doing this book, did it go exactly as you thought it would, or did it take on a life of its own?
You know what? Between the two of us, you know, I have a mantra that I live by, and I think I want to enforce this on you. But it was a two-way thing where I said, okay, to make this work, we need to plan the work and work the plan. And fortunately, you ran with that and you planned the hell out of what we were going to do. So firstly, we sat down and we thought about each chapter, each stage it would reflect in a business. And obviously we'd had our own experiences. We'd worked for UNSW Founders. We thought about the stages of business a lot. And then you planned it. You had this amazing Trello board that you created.
It was really, I think, helpful because Wenee and we work at different times of the day. So Wenee is more of an early bird who will have a nap at 3 p.m. in the afternoon if your schedule provides it. Whereas for me, I'm like a steam train where the longer I'm awake, the more productive I become, you know, the faster I move. So what it would often mean is that I might wake up at 7 a.m. and I'd hear Wenee furiously typing away and I'd think, oh my God, that means that I'm like 700 words behind for the day. So I'd start feeling stressed. So I think that was probably like the logistical aspect of how it differed, like finding our best working rhythm. But I think beyond that, we had this idea when we approached all of these different founders that everybody would offer a different kind of expertise and that we might have that classic formula of having one expert per chapter or maybe two. But then what we found was that they'd all faced such similar problems. Even though many of their industries were wildly different.
So different.
Yeah, they'd been on very similar journeys. And so that's when we thought, no, we need to change the format and we need to be able to scatter insights from these founders and CEOs throughout the entire book.
To reflect each stage.
Yes,
right?
and so that was really interesting. And so it kind of changed for us from thinking, okay, let's kind of treat this like a revolving door of experts each chapter to let's find the common thread between all of these different entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And that was
And
really
how it's
interesting for us
applied.
too.
Yeah, that actually worked out really well because, with other books like Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss and so forth, it's kind of the one lesson. There's a few more that just escaped me for the moment, but I do love that you brought the thread and said, "Look, these three companies experience," it." And then you might mention those three companies in different chapters later because it did translate very well. By the way,
Oh, thank you.
in fact, I love the how you interweave your own experience and also those of the companies. But the things that really I got, what I appreciated, was the key takeaways at the end of most chapters.
Yeah.
I really love that to solidify the learning or just to unwind the. Okay, so what was that mess there?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're writing,
What am I trying to remember here?
and what's the learnings from that? But at the end of the book, the glossary, hilarious. The
Thank you.
glossary, the glossary is hilarious. It's I'm telling you, for our audience, just pick it up if you're in startup or scale up mode. But it's just so funny.
Thank
You
you.
can see that it was planned and that it was well thought out. But I just love how you made it so real and like landed it so well.
Oh, thank you
you.
very much. Well, we've just been in so many conversations where
Right.
people in the startup space would throw around acronyms and
Oh,
lingo.
we were like, BAU. We've got to do the BAU. And I remember being in that meeting just going, I'm going to leave and figure out what BAU was about.
And it didn't matter how long we'd work in the industry, we'd always find these new terms that we'd never heard before. And we just thought this could be really alienating to somebody
It's
who
kind of
picks
just
up a
be
book.
us.
Yeah.
They come in like, what is customer lifetime value? And you just have to sit there going, oh, yes.
Or
it's-
CLV,
yeah,
as it's
CLV.
often referred to.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's so terrible that we're looking at the CLV graph and it's fantastic or it's bad. What are we talking about? So
Yeah.
just a simple explanation.
Because we wanted this to be accessible to somebody who had zero experience in this sector, who just had an idea that they wanted to explore a bit. But we also wanted to acknowledge that the lingo in the startup space can be a bit gatekeepery.
Oh, yeah.
You know, some people, I think they intend to do it, they wear it as a badge of honor, and other people, it's totally unintentional. They're just speaking the way they learn to speak. And we thought,
Yeah.
we probably should point that out without appearing to make like a big sanctimonious stance about it.
Yeah, and that's what I got from it. And the way that you described it in the glossary, just it comes across that way. It's, hey, if you're not sure, but this is what it means. But it's not even using an academic or dictionary version of it. It's like, oh, you know how this happens? Yeah, that's what this is. All right. So it's another way of saying this. Yeah. Okay. So it's just
Well, exactly. It's like because I remember walking out of a meeting. So I work for a big global legal tech, and it was a big company meeting where all these terms are getting thrown around, like CLV and SaaS and BAU and all of these terms. And I walked out and I like tapped my friend on the shoulder and said, "What the hell does that mean? What does that mean? Can you please tell me what that means?" And I think really when we wanted to write this glossary, we were like, we want to be that person that you can tap on the shoulder and go, "So what does that really mean?" Like in terms of imagine Christmas or imagine, because I think I remember one of them was about like you were talking about couch surfing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because the thing was, it was also probably a little bit cathartic because, at least for me, my mind would always take me to a strange place if I heard some term that I wasn't familiar with. Like, when I first heard sass in conversation, I just immediately heard, "Don't sass me, boy!" And exactly!
Yes.
Or then, like, if I heard BAU, or if I read BAU and it reads as bow,
Bow.
I would immediately think of Bow Down by Beyonce.
Well, I'm
And
so hungry. I'm like, where's my lunch?
Exactly. And so I thought, it seems to be a common thing that when you encounter alien language, your brain looks for the closest point of comparison.
Yeah, so it's
And
analogy.
Yeah, it was like a catharsis for us and also a bit of a confessional to say, look, this is actually what we think when we hear these words.
yeah. So now that the book's out, what's next for you both? I know it's only fresh out, and I'm so fortunate and appreciative that I managed to get you guys within the first month of release thereabouts. So,
Oh, thank you so much. No,
Thank
it's
you.
great to be here.
Yeah.
so
So we,
what's next for you guys? Is it just doing the run and the publicity, or are you doing workshops? What's going on?
Both actually. So we've been invited to do quite a few things. So we're speaking to, obviously we work with UNSW founders, so we're invited to do more workshops for various communities. And also, like, what's really interesting is that I was just yesterday asked to go to Western Sydney and Southwest Sydney. So for people not in Sydney, this is the parts of Sydney that you don't see on a postcard, and basically talk through some of these business principles, because I'm from there. That's where I grew up, So we're doing things like that. But also, we very recently were flown up to Bond University because they wanted to bring in some of these ideas into their programs.
I saw they had you on their vision board for the year.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
It did, yeah.
I think we really enjoy, and we're really grateful to be able to participate in the innovation community in Australia, because something we've concluded is that in ANZ, because we don't have this tall poppy syndrome, and I think because we're a very young country in our current post-colonial guise that celebrates its losses in the face of adversity. Like the fact that Gallipoli, for example, is such a formative national narrative for us, even though it was a military failure, it kind of speaks to our attitudes around adversity. And the fact that we pride ourselves on not taking ourselves too seriously, it's kind of resulted in this community where it doesn't feel nearly as cutthroat or competitive as the US. It's more this mentality of survival of the friendliest. Like when he began with that story about law school, right? Look to your left, look to your right, two of you won't be here at the end of the day. But then when you launched survival law and you became an academic, you started saying, look to your left, look to your right. Those are the two people you're going to need to work with to get through law school together.
And really, like, that's what we wanted to create, or help create, because that's part of the community that we've been a part of. So Australia is the second fastest growing startup ecosystem in the world. I did not know this until we wrote this book.
Yeah.
I was researching for some news thing. I'm like, what? And we've had this enormous, like, fantastic experience of sort of being part of it. A lot of our friends were part of it. So frankly, a lot of our friends are featured in the book, like Tim Fung, because we just happened to know him. We went to school with him, right? And it just meant that we got to see why this ecosystem has grown up in this way, what's different about it. And our book, we just hope to contribute to that and foster that at scale. Basically, the warm hug around an entire nation to go, hey, you can do this. This is how people have done it. And by the way, if you don't know what a runway is or a CLV or BAU, we got you.
That's right. And just to take that further, like, there's no shame in not coming from a technical background.
Absolutely.
There's no shame in letting your idea materialize as a small business or a side hustle, depending on your goals, that might even be more successful for you. And there's no shame in looking around at the community around you and seeing them as an asset rather than a liability. Those are the people who are going to help you reach your goal. They're not your competition. And so I suppose if there's a flag that we want to be flying now that the book is published, that would be it.
Yeah.
I love that. What a great way to finish. Now, we typically have been finishing off our segments with an AI idea of the week.
Please.
And I had one, and I could talk about that, but I think I have a better one.
Okay,
let's do it. Let's please.
Okay, so the first one was Dream Drop AI, which was, when you wake up in the morning from a very vivid dream and you're going, oh my God, that was insane. And you pick up your phone and you can use the notes or an app or something, you can record it, all the detail. So that in itself is pretty cool. But you could also put it on the market and have this kind of digital sharing marketplace of just hearing different ideas, and writers and creators could be buying your dreams. I mean, you're not doing anything with them anyway. In fact, you forget most of your dreams within a couple hours of being awake anyway. You might commercialize it. So I think that's one. Everyone has dreams. It's a global thing. We're looking for new creative content. If you look at some of the movies out there, they look like they're coming straight out of dreams. Maybe that's something. But the other is an app, and I might just build this with you anyway, is a translator, like a corporate speak translator. I go, it's this, tell me.
I love that.
Quick one.
I love that. I mean, it's a lot like I always think of that fantastic book Wankonomics.
Yes.
Exploring the country, and
That's so funny because I was looking at the two books and I was going to get that one and I picked up yours instead.
Hey,
this is high
what an
praise
honor!
because
Yes.
I love Wankonomics. So thank you.
If I may add, this is not so much an invention; it's more of an AI plugin, right, for an LLM. You raised such a valid point before when it came to speaking to your target market, conducting customer research, and inadvertently leading the witness. You know, just hearing what you want to hear and maybe not asking the difficult questions, even if it's subconscious. Well, one of my favorite approaches for using an LLM is to ask a question to, whatever it might be, for a business plan or a report structure or something. And then to say, okay, now I want you to act as a critic and I want you to point out every flaw with what you just created. And then suddenly the LLM of, oh, wow, you're such a genius. What an amazing question, disappears and you'll get tough love. I thought,
Yeah.
it'd be great if we could incorporate a plugin for those online conversations with our target market so that when somebody has given us an answer, the LLM immediately feeds it back to us and says, yeah, okay, but have you considered what they're not saying here?
So like a truth filter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And then
it's like the subtext filter.
yeah, and it forces you to have the difficult conversation with your target market.
I mean,
Yeah, I love that. I think devil's advocate loop or something like that.
oh, I like that.
Yes.
Devil's advocate loop. Like, because that's the
Dull
issue,
AI.
right? It stops people from falling in love with their idea. Your baby's
Yes.
beautiful. We love your baby. Your baby
Isn't it?
is a
No,
weird old man. who won't
it's
say
beautiful now, but maybe depends. Look at, I love that. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate everything you've done, all the research you put into it. There's loads more stories and anecdotes that you guys have shared in there, but it's not a hard read. I finished it within a couple of days. Hard to put down. Get a copy if you're watching this. If you're in startup, scale up, business owner, ideation, it's got everything there for you. So thank you so much, Wenee. Thank you so much, Thomas. And we look forward. I'll put the links into your books and the way that other people can get to it. But thanks so much for your time today.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sean. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Sean.
And for the rest of you, we'll see you on the next episode of Unicorn Ventures. All the best. Bye.
Bye.